Hey y'all, it's Dr. Yang here again, one more time, and this time I'm going to be talking to you about t-tests. Now, there's a couple of different t-tests that we are going to explore in our homework, but I'm going to show you how to do them, and then you can kind of extrapolate there from what you will need to finish your homework. So we're going to start on our handy dandy data view screen. And to do our first one, the kind of analysis that we are going to need for question 6, we come up here to analyze. We hit compare means, because remember a t-test is a way to compare means. And then we come down here to one sample t-test, because we're only going to look at one variable, which is that I've had the opportunities to reflect upon my intersecting identities when learning course materials. So we just pull that over here into the box of variables that we want to analyze, and we click OK. And then we get an output. So this is familiar, right? We have our N. So there was 3 people who didn't answer this question, as we're used to having an N of 89. We have our mean, which is important, our standard deviation, and our error. Now here are the results from the actual one sample t-test. We can see that our t-score is 50.893. Our degrees of freedom are 85, and our significance is p less than or equal to 0.000. So you're going to need to report this information for me, but then I'm going to ask you to compare something. I'm going to ask you whether the mean for this test, which is this number right here, is higher or lower than the score last year, which happened to be 2.9. So you're going to reflect on this number and see whether it's higher or lower than 2.9 and write that out in your results. So that's one t-test that we are going to explore. But we're also going to look at questions like number 7, which we're going to move that over here, which ask us, have those who have lived longer and had more life experiences developed more self-kindness? So for this, we need to do an independent sample. And so to do an independent sample t-test, you come over here to analyze, compare means, independent samples t-test. But now it looks a little different than we're used to, because we are asked to give a test variable and a grouping variable. So hopefully you have gone through and created your mean variables, and you now have a mean of self-kindness. Because what we're looking at is, have people who've had more life experiences developed more self-kindness? So we could look at our total, or we could look at our mean. I think the mean is going to be more informative. So we pull that over here. We look at the mean self-kind score that we had to create. Next, we're going to look for a grouping variable. Now, to do that, what I would do is I would come back. Actually, we're going to get out of our test, and we're going to do an analyze. We want frequencies for just age, okay? Because now we got to figure out our grouping variables. So we are going to come over here, and we're going to run a frequency on age to see which groups are biggest. And so we've got a lot of people here in this one, and we've got a lot of people down here in this one. So we might want to compare folks who are 30 to 34 compared to folks who are 20 to 24, because we've got a lot of people in these buckets. You can also probably get away with this one, but we're starting to get a little small down here. So we can compare this bucket and this bucket, which, remember, we have to go back to our coding to figure out. I just happen to remember that they were numbered 1 through 8. So this is bucket 1, bucket 2, and bucket 3. So that's important. We're going to jot that down. We're going to come back over here to compare means and independent samples t-test. We are going to put our mean for self-kind over here. And we're going to put our grouping variable by age. But you see, it gives us these 2 little question marks right away, so we have to define our group. So our first group, the 2 groups we want to compare, remember, was 1 and 3. Okay, so we want to see what are the mean self-kindness scores for groups 1 and group 3. So now we hit continue, and we hit OK, and we get our output. So to double check, remember, we were comparing 30 people in this one to 14 people in this one. We see that young people had a higher mean score. Remember, higher scores means more self-kindness than lower scores. And then down here, I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see see it in one screen. We have the results of our t-test. So when we're reporting this, we have our F value and our significance. We're not going to pay attention to those right now. We're going to come over here and look at our T value, our degrees of freedom, and our significance. Okay? So this is what you would report out to see if there's a statistically significant difference between the two, but you're also going to look and see which group has a higher mean. Okay? So for your homework, I didn't ask you to use mean kindness. I asked you to look at, no, I did. I said a mean score. Just kidding. I did ask you to look at a mean score. So you're going to have to walk through this and be able to answer questions about which group had a higher mean or a lower mean and whether or not the findings between those two comparison groups was statistically significant. These last couple of questions are supposed to be a little bit harder. There will be a little bit more room for thought here. But hopefully this will give you all of the tools that you need to calculate the answers. But certainly if you have any questions or concerns, I'm just an email away. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.